So in the past few years, I've seen more and more software engineers and developers transition into the world of design because they don't want to spend the rest of their lives being code monkeys, or what's more likely, they find design to be more interesting than developing software or writing code. In this video, I share how I went from software engineer to UX designer over the course of a year and give some tips on how to make that transition if you're interested in doing so as well. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Handoff, a channel dedicated to helping others land their first job in UX, UI, or digital product design by providing tips, tricks, and resources on making that transition from a different field. Today I'll be starting a new series where I'll be interviewing and sharing experiences from myself and others who transitioned into design from a different field, the steps we took to get there, and also provide some advice for others looking to do the same. So this whole first part is background on me and about my story. If you don't want to hear any of this, skip all the way to the timestamp below in the description box labeled Transitioning into UX. I won't get offended. So a little background on me and also a bit about my story and how I got to where I am today. So when I was born, I was a young child, a young infant. And I always had this creative interest or spirit that manifested itself in a few different ways. I remember taking a web design course in 7th grade where we worked with Adobe Dreamweaver and learned some pretty basic HTML and CSS. This is what my design looked like. No navigation, no purpose of the design. And I think I was going through my confused emo or scene phase at the time, so I think this was really an embodiment of what I wanted my hair to look like. Ultimately, when I got into high school, I remember joining the school newspaper and working as a webmaster to maintain and update their online website. However, the girl who had built the site before me was so technically advanced and talented that I think I broke the site within a few days after I took it over. I remember she built a custom theme for WordPress, and at the time I didn't really know what PHP was or even what a CMS was. We ended up having to contact her while she was in the first few months of college so that she could come fix it and someone else could take over the website. Needless to say, that really didn't last long. I think my first real segue into development and software engineering was during the first year of college. Coming in as a business major, I really didn't know anything about software engineering. It wasn't until a few friends on my freshman floor decided to join some app development clubs or web development clubs that I started to learn more about that side of things. A year into college, I decided to add on another degree to my studies, a combined math and CS degree. For the next few years, I would work pretty closely with some close friends and roommates to start a club that specialized in teaching web development to other students at the university, and paired students together into groups to develop websites for free for nonprofits in the Boston area. We called ourselves OpenWeb. Looking back, that experience was really rewarding. I learned how to communicate with clients and understand their needs, which helped me land some really cool freelance gigs and ultimately allowed me to start my own design agency. It also helped me learn how to teach beginners about design and development and explain more difficult concepts more easily, which I say is one of the most important skills I have as a design mentor today. But the most important thing I learned was how to actually design and build websites. I started doing a lot of freelance gigs in college for cheap, $15 an hour, $20 an hour. That opened a lot of new doors for me and allowed me to meet a lot of well-connected people that liked the work I did and mentors that I still stay connected to this day. Between my junior and senior year, I interned with 6 other interns at a pretty big company in the financial services industry. My official title was Software Engineering Intern, and I got to work on a lot of interesting projects. We did some interesting data visualization projects, came up with some custom dashboards in Jira, created scatter plots and sunburst charts, and also worked on enterprise search tools as well. I ended up sticking with the same company after I graduated from college and met some really great people in that role, many of which I'm still very close friends with to this day. For the first year in that role, I worked on some pretty interesting projects, building out an internal CRM and sales platform for web using Angular. That was mainly a front-end project. I also picked up some project management skills and learned about Scrum and Agile in the process. The company had 2 dedicated UX designers who were responsible for the entire financial platform and any supporting apps and systems as well. Ever since I started, I had always stuck my head into their work area and asked questions about design and the best way to build a certain feature or whether or not what I was building would actually work for our users. Around the same time, the company was under some pretty intense financial pressure, so they ended up letting one of the designers go. I saw that as an opportunity to step in and pick up some of the slack and help the other designer that was working alone. As an entry-level software engineer, I was able to show senior management my passion for design, and they ultimately allowed me to spend half my time working in the design function alongside the other designer. They also paid for me to attend General Assembly's part-time boot camp and pick up some of those necessary skills to at least get started in the field. However, a lot of what I learned in the program was just really rehashing and formalizing a lot of the stuff I had learned online through different courses about design, or reading Medium articles about other designers sharing their own experiences. On the side after work or on the weekends, I would spend a lot of my time reading popular design books or writing my articles and reflections on Medium, as well as my personal blog. For example, I read The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman and wrote an article about the design of newspapers, why the news industry is changing, which as of today has almost 18,000 views and more than 6,000 reads. After I read Nir Eyal's book Hooked, I wrote an article that analyzed how the video game industry exploits vulnerable populations and uses consumer psychology to get people addicted to spending money on in-game purchases that are almost akin to gambling. This article actually came up during an interview with the product manager for the current company I'm currently working for. I never monetized any of these articles, but rather they were a way for me to learn about design and apply them to a real-world case study. Around the same time, I started reading articles about design systems. They were all the hype a few years ago, and since then, the interest has kind of died down a bit, but they're still a very important part of the design development process. We had no such thing at that company, and as we were transitioning from a monolithic application into one with architecture that relied more on microservices, we had to find a way to keep everything in sync. I saw this as an opportunity to create a design system and bring others together to help achieve this vision of keeping everything in sync, both design and development. I remember some developers calling it the kitchen sink, some others calling it a component or style or brand library, but ultimately part of my job was evangelizing and getting other people to see the value in the design system and devoting some of their time to help out with it. That was the hardest part. Luckily, we had around 7 or 8 interns that joined us that summer, some really talented rising junior and seniors that were able to see the long-term value in a product like this. We spent that whole summer building out the design system, ultimately calling it Atlas to symbolize Atlas, the half-naked man who held up the sky and could hold up the design and development function at that company. But also because Atlas itself means maps or charts, which helps guide teams towards a single product direction. This was a really good case study that I was able to point to as I applied to new jobs, because companies want to see that you have experience bringing different perspectives together and leading projects, especially as a designer. That segue definitely was more natural, and I eventually convinced management and senior management to give me the title of UX engineer, officially eliminating the title software engineer from my resume. Around the same time, I took on some freelance projects for clients, did personal reviews for apps that I thought could use some UX improvements, and also picked up new skills on the side. After around 3 years of working at that job, I decided to make a switch into my current role. By that time, I had relevant work experience, a bootcamp under my belt, built up a repertoire of case studies and blog articles that spoke to my experience in design, and I had experience not only working with developers, but actually being one as well. After only just a few weeks of interviewing, I was able to secure my first dedicated UI/UX job. Here are some of the lessons I've learned in the process and tips on how you can transition into UX from the world of development. The first one is to make friends with the designers at your company. Designers always think that developers are out to get them, out to tell them that their designs can't be built, and developers always think that designers are just there to make things harder. If you actually take the time to understand what designers do, the work that goes into the final designs, and empathize with them in a way that other developers don't, not only will they appreciate you for being their ally, but they'll also tell you how to make your own work better. Secondly, I think development or software engineering is actually one of the easier fields to transition into UX from. If you're a software developer, it's likely you already know a lot about the product development process. You either work with designers or you understand Agile and you know what designs can or cannot be built easily. That's one of the most important parts. If you become a designer, you're actually more technically aware of the constraints behind what you're building. And if you were to pick up parts of the design process, understand the terminology and the theory, you actually have a really good chance of standing out. Thirdly, as a developer, boot camps I don't think are necessary. I went to a boot camp, but never did that once come up in an interview. I didn't even put it on my resume because I didn't want employers to think that that was all the experience I had. If you can build out a solid portfolio of design and development projects and learn from courses online, you should be able to transition into that field a lot easier. If you're at an existing company working as a developer or engineer, look into starting different initiatives that bridge the gap between design and development. If you're at a smaller company, you can propose working on a design system together with designers. You can also pair with designers to take on some user research projects or sit in on some interviews with the people you're building products for to better understand the pain points that you're solving for. As you go through the process, learn to document your journey. You might be used to writing or reading user requirements or documentation, so this process of transitioning into design should be written as if you want to share information with future employers or companies that you want to apply to. Creating a blog or Medium account to share with other developers your experience or your journey into design will not only make you a stronger design candidate, but if you ever want to continue working in software development or engineering, companies actually would love to see that you enjoy learning about other parts of the product development lifecycle and design as well. Note that if you're transitioning into design from the world of development, you really do need to be a people person. Learning the soft skills of asking the right questions and communicating effectively is just as important as learning the technical design skills as well. People see developers as a stereotypical, socially awkward team member who can't communicate well and sits at their desk all day, but most developers crave human interaction too, especially during this time where we're all remote. Take some time to develop empathy and understand the people you work with, as well as the people that you build products for. Ultimately, being a human-centered engineer and designer helps you stand out from the crowd that only focuses on the technical and not the social. The last point I want to make is one that I feel like is pretty obvious, but still needs to be said. If you're switching from development to design, you're not making a downgrade. There's this negative stigma in the industry that front-end developers or developers who are more design-oriented are less competent than their peers. And even to this date, a lot of my developer friends who catch up with me have this misconception that I copped out or that I'm not able to code or work as an engineer. Whether you work on the front end, the back end, or even if you don't know that much code to begin with and want to switch into design, it really doesn't make you any less valuable of a contributor. It just means you have different interests and enjoy working in a different part of the process more. Keep your head up and don't let other people sway you from your course. This was definitely a longer video, but I wanted to share my journey of how I got to where I am today, and also share some tips for other developers or engineers looking to do the same. If this video helped you out at all, drop a like, click that subscribe button for more tips and tricks, and also check out our mailing list in the description box below. See you guys in the next video.